What's going on? Welcome back to Trending Stocks. Today we're going to talk to you about SoFi. I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what really moved it, and go over everything else you need to know. But first, make sure to hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. SoFi did close 1.68% in the red. So I've kind of determined that SoFi is just inverse to logic in the broader market. Market is green, SoFi is red. Market's getting completely obliterated. SoFi surprisingly is green, so very backwards. And today there was a lot of volatility though, so 639 the low, 662 the high, a good amount of volume, so 41.5 million shares being traded, 41.3 is the average. Regrettably, a lot of the transactions done by institutions were sells, and you can tell that based on the bid, the ask, and the selling price. So these are all the transactions occurring on the secondary market above $100,000. 4.2 million, 2.24 were some large ones, but again, majority were sells. You did have some buying, kind of about 4 different transactions right there, and that originated right here, but not necessarily the best. Even SoFi after hours is going down slightly, 0.62%. So SoFi is just a very weird stock. I think a lot of people generally know that by now, because after their relatively good earnings, it did go down over the last 5 days about 15.29%. You see a lot of other companies having some pretty good earnings, and they actually go up and they stay up. One was Palantir today, so it did go up 10.38% today, had a high, I think, of pre-market was roughly around 28.70. You also had Upstart, which had their earnings pretty much after hours today, and I believe it was a double beat, and it is so far up 18.48%. So SoFi is just continuously lagging. I don't know if it will take possibly rate cuts to occur in order for SoFi to really move up higher. And right now for the September 18th meeting, there is a 70.5% likelihood of a 50 basis point cut, despite Powell kind of saying otherwise. And the fact that we haven't had any announcement, it is fair to assume that we won't have any emergency meeting to have any rate cuts or anything like that. So it's SoFi is just kind of stuck in limbo, and right now there hasn't been any new analyst ratings today. There was a couple that came out yesterday, so I did my video earlier on in the day, so I didn't really talk about this. So there was 2 that came out, one $7 and one $10 price targets, one buy, hold, Needham, KBW, so Tim, who has a 55% success rating, and then Kyle, who's been extremely bullish on SoFi in the past, which has a 49% success rating. So not necessarily the best. But despite that though, probably that's one of the attributing causes for SoFi to really defy logic yesterday and go higher. So the first time that actual bullish ratings are interpreted as bullish. So that's pretty good stuff. Aside from that, nothing really new coming from a lot of the data points over there. And when it comes to shorts, so shorts were rather timid today. So shorts only increased about 26.57 thousand shares. 16.76% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 175.35 million shares. This one is kind of on and off. So you do see once again the cost to borrow minimum being negative. So that is negative 0.2%, meaning there's a broker out there physically paying people to short SoFi. Wasn't necessarily the case yesterday, but last Friday there was. So whatever broker is kind of, which actually, thinking out loud, yesterday there was a lot of brokers that were having technical difficulty. So it is fair to assume whoever one of those entities that were having difficulty yesterday is probably the broker that is doing this, the cost to borrow minimum. Now I'm kind of just having an epiphany while I'm doing a video. So yeah, that I'll have to refer back to see who had those blackouts. I know Charles Schwab was one of them. Fidelity, I don't know, I'll double check and I'll maybe incorporate that in tomorrow's video, unless you guys know that offhand. But it is, yeah, fair to assume that one of those entities is the culprit behind this minimum being negative. Moving on to options, 3.94 million in calls, 2.09 million in puts. 47% of all the options being done are optimistic and bullish. And of the call options that were purchased today, you do see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $7 $7 mark, or in excess of $7. And you can tell that is possibly true optimism. And one way to tell and kind of distinguish between what is a shorts hedging and true optimism is the closest strike price is typically shorts hedging. Anything in excess of that is optimism. So that's how you can kind of distinguish the difference between them. And then looking at puts, you do see a consensus for it to be sub $6 by the end of next week. And normally you do see roughly for the week of August the 23rd around 450, and sub 450 is anticipated. So I'm not really sure of exactly what is coming out on that week, so August the 23rd, but definitely something to keep in mind. And this is open interest for the call option. So you do have 8,000 at that 650, 30,000 at the 7, 22,000 at the 750, and 27,000 at the 8. So it is fair to assume that maybe market makers might let SoFi away and kind of move higher above 650, because 8,000 is rather chump change. If it does get to that 15 to 20,000, this is where you typically see a lot of manipulation. And right now with it at $6.43 where it did close at, it is trading between this S2 and this S1. So 607 is going to be that next strong support. And then on the flip side, $6.52 is going to be that next strong resistance / target, which I do anticipate pretty much for the rest of the week, unless something crazy dramatic does happen. It flirt with this S1 quite a lot. And on the actual chart itself, so it kind of regained back into the lower percentile of the Bollinger Band. Stochastic, you do see it at 16, so still considered oversold, and number of retail investors have been getting out. So all in all, not necessarily the best. So you kind of have mixed data. Options activity is cautiously optimistic. Shorts is somewhat neutral, so they're not really doing all that much. And the technicals, regrettably, are rather bearish. So again, not necessarily the best, but give yourself a shout out. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What have you been doing with SoFi? And have you guys been doing options? And if so, what have you been kind of dabbling with? Have you been bullish overall, bearish, and what strike prices? So kind of curious if you guys have been learning that and trying it. Like I said, in my experience, the best learning lesson is physically just doing it. Just do it with one options, start small, and just get your feet wet. And yeah, if you lose $20, $30, it'll compound so much more down the line. Just start small, don't go heavy in, even though you might think that you know what you're talking about and kind of doing it, definitely, sometimes there's a learning curve. So let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up. And with all that, appreciate all of you watching.